My name is Robert. I'm 55 years old, and I thought I had already lived through the worst that life could throw at me. Losing my wife, Jennifer, 10 years ago nearly broke me. But I never imagined that the deepest cut would come, not from a stranger, but from the very people I trusted most, my own family. It happened on an ordinary evening. I came home from work, carrying a bag of groceries, expecting nothing more than dinner with my daughter, Jessica. Instead, I walked into a storm I never saw coming. Jessica was standing in the living room, her face pale, her hands trembling as she held a stack of papers. Across from her, lounging on my armchair as though he owned the place, was my younger brother, Charles. Charles looked at me with a smirk that sent a chill down my spine. Then he said words that shattered my world in an instant. "Robert, this house isn't yours anymore. You signed it over to me. Ask Jessica. She's seen the papers. I'm the rightful owner now." I froze in the doorway. For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. My house? Signed over? Impossible. This was the home Jennifer and I had built with our bare hands, brick by brick, memory by memory. Every corner of it held a piece of our life together. There was no way I would ever give it up. And yet, there was Jessica, staring at me with confusion in her eyes, as though she didn't know what to believe. "Dad," she whispered, "is it true? Did you really give Uncle Charles the house?" My chest tightened. The betrayal wasn't just in Charles's words. It was in the doubt I saw flicker across my daughter's face. Charles had gotten to her. He had poisoned her mind with lies, and I was standing there, helpless, as the one person I loved most began to question me. I wanted to scream, to tear those papers out of her hands, to shake her and remind her of all the sacrifices I had made to keep this family together. But my voice failed me. Instead, I sank into silence, watching as Charles basked in the power he held. "See, Jessica," Charles said smoothly, "your father's been struggling to handle things since your mother passed. He knows I'm better suited to manage the property, to secure your future. That's why he signed it over. He might not admit it now, but deep down, he knows I'm right." His words burned like acid. Struggling? Yes, I had struggled after Jennifer's death, but never once did I consider handing over the home that meant everything to us. I could feel anger boiling inside me, but it was laced with something worse, fear. Fear that Jessica might actually believe him. Fear that I might lose her too, just as I had lost Jennifer. At that moment, standing in my own living room, I realized I wasn't just fighting for bricks and walls. I was fighting for my daughter's trust, for her loyalty, for the bond Jennifer and I had worked so hard to protect. You might wonder how a brother could stoop so low, how family could turn into an enemy. But betrayal doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in slowly, like a shadow stretching across the floor, until you don't even notice it's swallowed the light. Looking back, the signs were always there. I just refused to see them. Charles had always been jealous. When we were boys, I was the responsible one, the one who studied hard, who helped our parents. Charles was charming, reckless, always in trouble. I bailed him out more times than I could count. When Jennifer died, I thought he was finally stepping up, being supportive. He spent time with Jessica, kept her company when I was buried in work. I thought he was helping. I was wrong. He was planting seeds, twisting her view of me, setting the stage for this very moment. That night, as I sat alone in my room, staring at the papers Charles had shoved in my face, a horrible thought took root. What if Jessica chose him over me? What if she believed I had lost my mind, that I was unfit to manage the house, the estate, our lives? Charles knew exactly where to strike, and he had struck with precision, at the heart of my greatest fear. And you, listening to my story right now, you've probably felt something similar, haven't you? That gut punch betrayal by someone you trusted, someone who should have stood by you, but instead stabbed you in the back. If you've ever felt the sting of being doubted by your own loved ones, then you already understand the pain I was living through. If you do, then I want to ask you, stay with me through this journey. My story isn't just about losing, it's about fighting back. And if you feel my pain, if you want to see how justice can rise even in the darkest of times, then take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who knows what betrayal feels like. Because this isn't just my story, it could be any of ours. That night marked the beginning of a war I never wanted, but couldn't avoid. Charles thought he had won. He thought, with a few forged papers and some clever lies, he could steal not just my home, but my daughter's loyalty. He underestimated me. He underestimated a father's love, a husband's memory, and the fire that betrayal can light inside a man's soul. This was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the edge of my bed, Jennifer's photograph in my hand, the silence pressing down like a weight on my chest. Her smile, frozen in time, reminded me of the life we had built together. She had died too young, an accident on a rainy night 10 years ago. And since then, I had promised myself that Jessica would never feel abandoned. Yet, in that moment, I realized I had already failed. Because while I was drowning in work, trying to pay bills and keep our lives steady, Charles had been there, filling the gaps I had left. He had wormed his way into Jessica's heart while I was too busy surviving. And now he was exploiting the trust I had neglected. The guilt gnawed at me. If Jennifer could see us now, what would she think? Would she blame me for letting her brother, my own brother, sink his claws into our daughter? The next morning, Jessica avoided me. She sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee, eyes downcast, scrolling through her phone. Charles's papers still lay on the counter, like a weapon he'd left behind. "Jessica," I said gently, pulling out the chair across from her. "We need to talk." She flinched, then set her mug down with trembling hands. "Dad, I don't know what to believe anymore. Uncle Charles showed me documents, your signatures on them. If you didn't sign them, then how?" The words lodged in her throat, but the doubt in her eyes cut me deeper than any knife. I leaned forward. "Jessica, I never signed away this house. Never. Do you understand? Charles forged those papers. He used my trust against me. He's lying to both of us." But even as I said it, I saw the hesitation in her face. She wanted to believe me, but Charles had planted his poison too deep. That day, I went to the bank. I demanded copies of every document Charles claimed I had signed. And when I held them in my hands, my blood ran cold. My signature was there, but wrong. Too perfect, mechanical. It wasn't handwriting, it was mimicry. Charles had forged it with some program, maybe even hired someone. He had also slipped in a clause using the power of attorney I had once foolishly granted him years ago, back when Jennifer was alive, when I trusted him to help with paperwork after her accident. That's how he'd done it. My own blind trust had given him the weapon. I walked out of the bank with my fists clenched, my mind burning. He hadn't just stolen a house. He had desecrated Jennifer's memory. He had taken advantage of my grief, of my trust, of my absence as a father. That night, I confronted him. He was waiting at a downtown bar, laughing with friends like nothing was wrong. When he saw me, his smirk widened. "Well, big brother," he drawled, lifting his glass, "come to toast my new property?" I slammed the forged documents onto the table. The laughter around us died. Charles glanced at the papers, then leaned back, utterly unfazed. "You think anyone will believe you over me?" he said. "You were a wreck after Jennifer died. Everyone knows you've been slipping. I've been the one holding things together. Ask Jessica, she knows it. You'll look desperate, Robert, pathetic." The way he said her name, Jessica, like she belonged to him, like he was her protector now, made my hands shake with fury. But before I could respond, he leaned closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "You've already lost, brother. All that's left is for Jessica to admit it. I walked out, my heart pounding, my vision blurred with rage. I wanted to punch him, to break his smug face, but I knew that's what he wanted. He wanted me to snap, to prove I was unstable. No, I had to be smarter. But that night, as I lay awake, Jessica knocked softly on my door. Her face was pale, conflicted. "Dad," she whispered, "Uncle Charles told me you were at the bar tonight. He said you threatened him. Please tell me you didn't." My chest tightened. He was already spinning the story, turning me into the villain before her eyes. I swallowed hard. "No, Jessica, I didn't threaten him. I confronted him with proof that he forged those documents." She bit her lip, torn, her eyes darting between me and the floor. I don't know who to trust anymore. That was the dagger, the final twist of Charles's knife. But then she hesitated, and in that hesitation I saw something, doubt, not in me, but in Charles. Her faith in him wasn't unshakable. A seed had been planted. And that's when I knew this battle wasn't going to be won in banks or bars. It was going to be won in the one place where Charles had no control, our family. Because in just a few days, there would be a family gathering, a dinner where cousins, uncles, aunts, everyone would be present. Charles was planning to flaunt his victory there, to humiliate me publicly. But I had another plan. As I lay in bed that night, staring at Jennifer's photo, I whispered to her, "I'll make him expose himself, in front of everyone, and Jessica will see the truth with her own eyes." And just as that thought settled, I heard a crash downstairs. A door slamming, a voice, Jessica's voice, raised in anger. I bolted upright, my heart racing. Something was happening. I raced downstairs, my bare feet slapping the hardwood floor. Jessica's voice echoed through the living room, sharp with anger. "You can't just come in here whenever you want," she was yelling. And then I saw him, Charles, standing in my house again like he owned it already. His coat draped casually over a chair, his smirk back in place. He didn't even flinch at Jessica's outrage. "I have every right," he said smoothly. "This property's mine, sweetheart. Your father just hasn't accepted reality yet." Jessica's hands were clenched into fists at her sides. Her face was red, not from loyalty to me, but from humiliation. He was treating her like a pawn, and for the first time I saw her chafe against it. "Charles," I said, stepping forward, my voice low, "get out." He tilted his head, amused. "Or what? You'll hit me? In front of your daughter? That'll prove my point nicely." Jessica turned to me, her eyes pleading, caught in the crossfire. And in that second, I realized Charles wasn't just targeting me. He was using her as his stage. I took a step back, forcing control. "Jessica, go upstairs, please." She hesitated, then stormed past both of us, muttering, "I'm not a child." But I caught the flicker of doubt in her eyes as she went. Charles noticed it too. When she was gone, he leaned close, his breath sour with whiskey. "Family dinners this weekend. You'll be there, of course. And when I raise my glass, you'll sit quietly while I tell everyone how I saved poor Jessica from her father's mistakes. You'll play the fool, Robert, and they'll eat it up." Hearing my wife's name twisted in his lies felt like a knife, but I forced myself not to react. Not yet. He left with the arrogance of a king departing his castle. The door clicked shut, and the silence he left behind felt heavier than before. Upstairs, I heard Jessica's door slam. The next day, I went to work but couldn't focus. Every time I tried, Jennifer's voice whispered in my memory, "Be there for her, Robert. She needs you." The truth was brutal. I hadn't been there. Not fully. When Jennifer died, I threw myself into overtime shifts, into survival mode. Jessica had been 14 then, old enough to understand loss, but too young to carry it alone. Charles had stepped in, school pickups, weekend outings, checking in when I wasn't around. At first, I was grateful, but now I saw it for what it was, groundwork. He'd been planting seeds for years. That night, Jessica knocked on my door again. She looked exhausted, eyes rimmed with shadows. "Dad," she said quietly, "Uncle Charles, he told me you used to drink a lot after Mom died, that you couldn't handle things. Is that true?" Her words pierced me, because it was true. For a while, I had drowned my grief in whiskey. Not every night, not for long, but enough that Charles must have noticed. I nodded slowly. Yes, I made mistakes. I was broken, but I never stopped loving you, Jessica. Never. Everything I did, all the hours I worked, all the sacrifices, it was to keep us afloat. But I should have been here, and I'm sorry. Her lips parted, surprise flashing in her eyes. Maybe she had expected denial. Instead, I gave her the truth. "I don't want you to take my word against Charles's," I added. "I want you to see him for who he is, and you will." She stared at me for a long moment, then whispered, "I don't know who to believe anymore." And she left again, torn in two. 2 days later, the family dinner arrived. The restaurant was buzzing when we walked in. Dozens of relatives gathered around long tables, the air thick with chatter and the smell of roasted meat. Laughter floated above the clinking of glasses. To them, it was just another reunion. To me, it was a battlefield. Jessica sat beside me, stiff, her eyes darting toward Charles, who stood at the center of it all. He was in his element, greeting cousins, hugging aunts, kissing babies like some crooked politician. When he finally raised his glass, the room quieted. "To family," he declared, his voice rich with false warmth. "To the bonds that hold us together, even when life tries to tear us apart." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. He glanced at me, smirking, "And to stepping up when others can't. Jessica, sweetheart, you know what I mean." A few relatives turned toward her, curious. Jessica flushed, shrinking in her seat. My fists clenched under the table. But then Charles reached into his jacket, and what he pulled out made my stomach drop. A folder. The same forged documents. He held them up for all to see. "Proof, ladies and gentlemen. My brother here signed over the house years ago, out of gratitude, out of trust. But now he's trying to backtrack. Sad, really." Gasps spread through the table. Eyes turned toward me. Whispers rose like a tide. Jessica's face drained of color. She looked at me, then at Charles, then back again. The room hung in silence. And in that silence, Charles leaned close to her and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "It's okay, Jessica. You don't have to defend him anymore. You know the truth." The air around us crackled with tension. And then Jessica stood. Jessica's chair scraped loudly against the wooden floor as she rose. Every eye in the room turned toward her. Forks froze in midair, glasses halfway lifted. For a heartbeat, she stood trembling, her hands clenched at her sides, caught between loyalty and doubt. Charles's smile widened. "Go on, sweetheart. Tell them what you've seen. Tell them who really took care of you." The words hung in the air like poison. Jessica's lips parted, but nothing came out at first. She glanced at me, then down at the papers in Charles's hand. The room felt like it was shrinking, the air thick with judgment. I braced myself for the worst. Finally, her voice cracked the silence. I don't know what to believe anymore." Gasps, whispers, shifting chairs. A wave of pity and suspicion washed over me from my own family. Charles seized the moment. He stepped forward, draping a rehearsed arm across Jessica's shoulders. "There, you see? She's torn because she knows. Robert isn't the father he pretends to be. He abandoned her. I was the one who showed up. I was the one who paid her school fees, who helped with groceries, who kept the lights on when her father was too drunk to manage. The words struck like hammers. My chest tightened, shame burning hotter than anger. But then Jessica flinched under his touch. She shook him off, just slightly, but enough for me to see. The cracks in his performance were showing. I stood slowly. My knees trembled, but my voice was steady. Charles, tell them exactly how you paid for all those things. Go ahead. Tell them where the money came from. His eyes narrowed, just for a fraction of a second, before his smile snapped back into place. From my hard work. Everyone here knows I've always been the successful one. I leaned across the table. Hard work? Or Jennifer's life insurance policy? The one you helped me manage after her death? The policy you siphoned piece by piece while pretending to keep the books for me? The murmur of voices grew louder, rippling through the room like a storm tide. Charles's smirk faltered. Jessica's eyes widened. "What?" she whispered. I turned to her, my throat thick. "He didn't just support you, Jessica. He used you. Every dollar he spent, every gesture of kindness, it was your mother's money, money she left for us. He made himself look like the hero, while I broke my back trying to keep the rest of it afloat." Charles slammed his hand against the table, rattling glasses. Lies! But the edge in his voice betrayed him. Cousin Mark, who had always been suspicious of Charles, spoke up. "If you've got nothing to hide, Charles, show us the account statements. You always bragged about keeping meticulous records." Charles froze. For the first time all night, he had no smooth reply. Jessica looked at him, her face pale. "Is that true? Did you take Mom's money?" He reached for her hand, but she pulled it back. "Jessica, no!" she shouted, her voice breaking. "Answer me!" The room fell silent again. And in that silence, Charles made his fatal mistake. He sneered. "So what if I did? Better me than your useless father, who couldn't even keep your mother alive." The words hit like a bomb. Jessica's gasp was sharp, a wound torn open. My knees buckled, grief and fury surging together. "You bastard!" I whispered. The family erupted. Aunts shouting, uncles pounding the table, cousins dragging children away from the chaos. Jessica covered her face with her hands, sobbing. And Charles, realizing he had overplayed his hand, tried to recover. Listen, all of you," he stammered. "I only did what was best. Robert couldn't provide. He was drowning. Enough!" Jessica's voice cut through the din, raw and furious. She lowered her hands, her face streaked with tears. "Don't you dare talk about Mom like that. Don't you dare blame Dad for her death. He loved her, and he loves me. You only ever loved yourself." Her words struck him harder than anything I could have said. Charles faltered, shoulders sagging as the weight of the room turned against him. The relatives he had charmed now glared, disgust in their eyes. A few shook their heads. I reached across the table and took Jessica's trembling hand. For the first time in years, she didn't pull away. She clung to me like a child again, broken but reaching for safety. Charles backed away, his arrogance finally shattered. "You'll regret this," he spat, but his voice was hollow. "No," Jessica said firmly, "you will." The family watched as he stormed out, the door slamming behind him. The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica buried her face against my chest, sobbing. I wrapped my arms around her, my own tears spilling freely. And though the war wasn't fully over, the documents, the legal mess, the scars of betrayal, something had shifted. For the first time in years, we were united. And as I looked around the room at the shocked faces of my family, I realized Charles hadn't just lost his grip on us. He had exposed himself to everyone. His empire of lies had collapsed in one brutal evening. The storm had broken. But in its wake, I knew the hardest part was just beginning, rebuilding what he had tried so hard to destroy. When the front door slammed and Charles's footsteps faded into the night, the air inside the dining room was heavy, as if every breath carried the residue of his poison. No one moved at first. Plates sat half-filled, candles flickered, and the scent of roasted chicken had turned sickly in the tension that lingered. Jessica's hand was still clutched in mine. I could feel her pulse racing, frantic as a trapped bird. For years I had wished for this closeness, but never under such painful circumstances. My brother Mark finally broke the silence. "Robert, is it true? About the insurance? About what he did?" I nodded, the weight of years pressing on my shoulders. "Yes. Jennifer left us more than love. She left a safety net. Charles offered to help manage it when I was drowning in grief. I thought he was saving us. All the while, he was stealing from us." Gasps circled the table. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others muttered curses under their breath. Jessica swallowed hard. "Dad, why didn't you tell me?" Her voice wasn't angry. It was fragile, like glass at the edge of breaking. I squeezed her hand gently. "Because I didn't want to taint your image of him. You had already lost your mother. I didn't want you to lose the uncle you admired too. I thought protecting you meant keeping the ugliness away." Tears welled in her eyes. "But all it did was push me toward him." Her words cut deeper than any blade, but they were true. My silence had left a void Charles filled with lies. "I know," I whispered, "and I'll carry that mistake forever. But Jessica, listen to me now. I will never lie to you again. Whatever truth we face, we'll face it together. No more secrets." She stared at me for a long moment, her tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Then, slowly, she leaned into me, resting her forehead against my shoulder. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a step. Around us, relatives began murmuring, some rising from their seats to clear dishes, others shaking their heads at Charles's audacity. The dinner that was meant to celebrate family had turned into a battlefield of betrayal, but something stronger had been forged in its ashes: clarity. Later that night, when the guests had gone and the house was quiet again, Jessica and I sat together in the living room. The old lamp cast a warm glow, highlighting the framed photographs of Jennifer that still adorned the mantel. Jessica traced a finger along one of the frames. "I miss her every day." "Me too," I said softly. "And I know I failed to hold us together the way she would have wanted. But I promise you, Jessica, from this moment on, I'll fight for us. I won't let Charles or anyone else come between us again." She turned to me, her face pale but resolute. "Then I want to fight too, not just for us, but for Mom. He disrespected her memory, Dad. We can't let him get away with that." Her words filled me with a bittersweet pride. She was no longer the little girl Charles could manipulate with half-truths and gifts. She was her mother's daughter, strong, principled, ready to stand for what was right. Together, we made a plan. The next days were grueling. Lawyers were contacted, documents reviewed, statements gathered. Charles had left a messy trail, and, for once, his arrogance worked against him. Every forged signature, every falsified withdrawal, every fraudulent loan was there, plain as day. Jessica came with me to each meeting, her presence a reminder of why I had to see this through. At first, she was hesitant, her voice trembling when questioned. But with each session, her confidence grew. She asked sharper questions, challenged assumptions, even pointed out discrepancies that others overlooked. One evening, as we pored over files, she leaned back and said, "You know, Dad, I used to think you were weak, always tired, always quiet, always broken after Lom died. But now I see you weren't weak. You were just carrying too much alone." Her words undid me. My throat tightened, my vision blurred. "I never wanted you to think that. But if you see me now, see us now, then maybe it's not too late." She smiled faintly. "It's not too late. Not for us." The final blow against Charles didn't come in a courtroom or a boardroom. It came at a community fundraiser weeks later. The same relatives and neighbors who had witnessed his performance at the family dinner were there. Jessica and I presented the truth, documented evidence of his theft, his manipulation, his betrayal of Jennifer's legacy. Gasps, anger, disgust filled the room. Charles wasn't there to defend himself. He had vanished from the town he once lorded over, but his absence was admission enough. That night, as we walked home under the cool night sky, Jessica slipped her arm into mine. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. "You almost did," I admitted. "But I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel that way again." She squeezed my arm, and for the first time in years, I felt a fragile but undeniable sense of peace. Back home, I stood before Jennifer's photograph. Jessica joined me. Together, we lit a small candle in her memory. "Mom," Jessica said softly, "we're okay now. We're together again. I hope you can see us." And in that moment, I swear I could almost feel Jennifer's presence, a quiet warmth, a whisper of approval in the still air. I turned to Jessica. "We'll honor her not by what we lost, but by what we've rebuilt." She nodded, tears glistening. As we blew out the candle, I felt a new chapter opening. Not one free of pain or loss, but one full of truth, unity, and the kind of strength Jennifer had always believed we had. And if you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever had someone you love turned against you, I want you to remember this. You can rebuild. You can find your way back to trust, to family, to love that endures even the darkest storms. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of your own strength or your bond with someone you refuse to give up on, then please like this video, share it, and subscribe. Because together, through these stories, we remind each other that love, truth, and justice always find a way. This story may be over, but the betrayals never stop. Like this video, share it with your circle, and subscribe to Chronicles of Family Betrayal so you don't miss what's coming next. Another shocking story is just one click away below.